Hi everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and today I want to bring you a video discussing the transit of Venus in Aries squaring Pluto in Capricorn. And this is going to happen on February 28th at 3:08 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And you can see in the chart that I have pulled up, this is the exact moment where the two energies are in square. So something to point out is that this is the first time that Venus has met with Pluto since the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in January of 2020. So there's something special about this particular meeting with Venus and Pluto. Typically, Venus moves around the solar system in less than a year, so it's not atypical for it to be meeting with Pluto. The last time that Venus did square Pluto in the signs of Aries and Capricorn was in May of 2019. So it happens frequently. But again, this particular time is interesting because we're talking about a new way of Venus relating to Pluto, in the sense that we've had this conjunction between Saturn and Pluto since the last time Venus met in this way with Pluto. So first, let's talk about what Venus in Aries is all about. Venus is about beauty. It's about creative expression. It relates to relationships and the feeling of wanting to be desired, wanting to be loved. It rules relationship signs, Taurus and Libra. And it has this feeling of wanting to sort of retreat and allow things to come to it. Now, it's in this sign of Aries. And in astrology, it's said that Venus in the sign of Aries is considered in its detriment because Venus doesn't necessarily feel the most comfortable in Aries, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it's about the bursting forth of consciousness into awareness. And it relates to initiating things, and it relates to having courage, and it relates to taking action. But if Venus is sort of this receptive energy that wants things to come to it, it feels a little uncomfortable or not quite sure how to work through this energy of Aries. It's like, if you can imagine this, beautiful goddess, but she's got her shield and she's got her armor on and she's holding a sword, and she's kind of like, what do I do with this? I don't want to fight. But there is something, of course, important about Venus being in the sign of Aries, in the sense that, we do need to be able to stand up for what we value. We need to stand up for our perspective in relationships. We need to take action and take initiative if we want to be creative in our lives. So there's an important connection between Venus and Aries. Some expressions of Venus and Aries might be expressing affection in authentic ways, expressing affection in self-affirming ways, expressing affection with courage and with initiative, and with a pioneering spirit, and with independence. So you can get the idea of how Venus can express itself in the sign of Aries. It is sort of giving Venus a boost and saying, hey, take initiative. But at the same time, we want it to be in alignment with becoming more aware and using our consciousness to make decisions around these areas of our lives, and not just blindly or impulsively going after things without really recognizing whether it's the best for us or not. That can be some of the drawback of Venus and Aries. It's just, it's more instinctual, and if it's going after the things that it wants for pleasure, or because it wants to connect socially, if we're not really becoming aware of whether or not it's the right environment for us, or if it's the right connection for us, we can find ourselves in situations where we're realizing that we've pushed too hard, or we haven't given it enough forethought before taking action. Now, Pluto is a different energy. And Pluto relates to transformation, ultimately. Pluto can be the symbolism of power and really focused attention and energy directed in a specific direction, where we can work really hard at creating something. It is about plumbing the unconscious in order to understand our motivations, because sometimes things that motivate us unconsciously are not necessarily the best things for us. Sometimes they can be, and both processes of bringing to awareness whatever is in our unconscious, allowing it to come forth, and being able to identify what is driving our behavior is important. There can be many gifts in the unconscious, and there can be a lot of dragons in the unconscious. And I wanted to read some information about Pluto, but through the lens of the sign of Scorpio, because they are related. Every sign is ruled by a planet, and Pluto rules Scorpio. And this article is talking about the 3 phases of a Scorpio totem. And it talks about the first phase of Scorpio being the deadly stinger. And it says that a Scorpio in this stage is ruled by emotions and instincts rather than the intellect. Scorpios in this category have low self-awareness and low self-control. The most dangerous and vengeful Scorpio belongs to this totem. These Scorpios will go to any extent to destroy someone, even if it means at their own cost. So that's kind of the most unevolved expression of the Scorpio energy. Then next we have the flying high in the sky. This is the second totem of Scorpio, where one is self-aware of his or her powers. And once a Scorpio has devoted sufficient self-awareness and is ruled by intellect rather than instincts and emotions, he or she can choose to use these traits as wanted. Usually in this stage, most of the Scorpios try to achieve great heights in their career and endeavors. This does not mean that a Scorpio in this totem does not have a stinger, but the way a Scorpio defeats his enemy here is different from that of the basic Scorpion. A Scorpio here is not self-destructive. As a normal eagle would do, a Scorpio would swoop down on his prey, defeat it, and fly back in the air, and not looking for complete destruction of his enemy. Be aware that a Scorpio in this totem can still be manipulative and exploitive. All right, and then the third phase is the symbol of peace, the phoenix and dove. And this totem is where the true power of Scorpio is shown to the world. This is the totem where a Scorpio becomes aware of his or her mystical powers of healing. While most people consider a Scorpio to be a venomous creature, the true power of a Scorpio lies in healing and spreading peace. That is the ultimate way of exerting one's power. That is the reason this totem is symbolized by a dove. But this is not easy. A Scorpio needs to go through a complete transformation to achieve this power. This transformation is symbolized by the phoenix, which burns and rises from its own ashes. A Scorpio is the only sign in the entire zodiac to have known this power. Hence, every transformation in a Scorpio's life can be symbolized by a phoenix. And this, by the way, is from a website called exemplore.com. And the title of the article is 3 Phases of a Scorpio Totem. So again, the reason I talk about Scorpio in this description right now is because Pluto is the planet that is related to Scorpio. So there's a similar energy about Pluto. Pluto energy is atomic. Pluto energy relates to death and transformation. Pluto energy wants to connect us to the deepest expression of our soul. But in the process, we have to uncover these emotional layers that may be driving our behavior. And so with Venus and Pluto connecting at this time, we are going to be able to see where some of our Venusian desires for pleasure and for, drawing things to us in order to satisfy our pleasures may be being driven by these scorpionic, unconscious, plutonic energies that may not be the best expression of who we are or who we want to be. Pluto is really about, ultimately, like it said, healing and sharing healing energy with others. But depending on what level of awareness we're operating at, this could play itself out as just flat out battles in relationships with other people. I mean, especially because Venus and Aries can be very impulsive, and Pluto and Capricorn can be kind of cold and a little bit even cruel, or just kind of harsh. But on another level, it can mean where we are just realizing we need to, cut ties, or we need to transform around some of these relationship issues in our lives. And whether it's how we're interacting in a relationship with somebody else, or even the way we personally are behaving in relationship with other people, ways that are kind of, if Pluto's a lot about energy and how we use our energy from an emotional place, we have a lot more energy if we can learn to tailor where our energy goes. And if we're caught up in these, obsessive, controlling, manipulative behaviors in relationship, that's ultimately harming ourselves. I mean, that article talked about how the Scorpio will harm itself to harm its opponent, and that's that next expression of learning how our energy really can go in a lot of different directions when we're operating more unconsciously and not as aware of how we're using our energy with other people. Now, what can happen too is ultimately we see that we want to redirect our energy, and we want to put it towards being creative, or we want to put it towards more self-affirming relationships in our life, or self-affirming activities socially, or self-affirming activities creatively that don't suck our energy from us. And another expression of this Pluto and Capricorn is that Capricorn is that, goat climbing the rock mountain. And so there's a lot of energy here to really learn to kind of control that Plutonian energy through work and effort and structure, and kind of staying on a path and allowing ourselves to sort of create new directions and new focus for ourselves. And then finally, of course, if we're expressing that third level of the Scorpio energy with awareness, we could be really expressing ourselves in a creatively healing way in whatever creative endeavors we might be exploring right now in our lives, offering people a creative message, offering people a healing message. But also this could be really being able to connect with people in our relationships in a new way, with more authenticity and depth and truth and honesty, and not any of this manipulative or, more unconscious energy, where we're really getting to the bottom. That's Pluto. It wants to get to the bottom of things and understand things deeply. We could really be getting to the bottom of things in our relationships with other people, and realizing very deep truths about our situations. This could just be us learning. Venus and Aries is a very pioneering spirit in regards to loving energy and creative energy, and we could be learning about how we no longer want to operate in certain ways that just are not on an elevated plane, that are just not operating with more awareness. And we may realize that we need to transform, and we need to make different choices around how we want to express our energy, especially in relationships. And, I want to go back to what I said at the beginning of this video. Saturn and Pluto conjuncted in Capricorn in January of 2020, and this is the first time that Venus is meeting with Pluto since that conjunction, and this is called an opening square, where Venus moving in this direction is the first time it's creating a 90-degree angle as it's moving to Pluto. So it's an opening square, and it relates to, I believe, what's called a crisis of action, which means some sort of action is required between these two energies at this time. And so there is some kind of change that's required. So something is happening, that since that conjunction between Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, that conjunction is a 30-year cycle that relates to how we create structure and foundation in our life. And then there's this energy of complete transformation involved. So we're transforming these structures and ways of doing things from the past that have now come to a point where they need to change. And it's happening in Capricorn, which is about, again, work and effort, and this is time. This is going to happen over time. But now Venus is meeting with Pluto, and this is kind of now dissecting the work a little bit more. And it's saying it has something to do with how we assert ourselves in a Aries manner in our connections with other people. Also, by the way, with money. This is the planet that rules. Venus is the planet that rules Uranus, which is now in Taurus, and that's changing our values in relationship to money. And so here we have Venus in Aries, and here it's like our first opportunity to kind of see how we can transform Pluto, our relationship perhaps to that more impulsive way of spending money, or that more self-gratifying way where it's like we just, we do it without thinking, or we do it on impulse, and we really need to have more awareness around how we are using our finances. I do want to also say that what's going to happen here is that coming up on the 3rd of March, Venus is going to square Saturn, and this is the first time it's meeting with Saturn. And what this might be relating to in this dynamic is, Saturn does deal with endings. Saturn does deal with it does also deal with work and effort, but in this square, in this crisis of action, we may just be getting another hit or understanding of where we need to kind of pull back a little bit with this Venus and Aries energy in our lives and be more responsible. I mean, that's what Saturn's all about. Pluto kind of just freaking destroys stuff. Whereas Saturn can kind of say, okay, how do we want to move forward with effort, with work, in a way that creates better foundation and better structure for ourselves. So it might be where we're getting more of an idea of how to move forward after we've sort of had these more deep realizations about things. Now, how do we kind of put the pieces back together and create new form and structure in relationship to relationship? Then what's going to be happening is that we are going to be having Venus creating a sextile with Mercury, as Mercury is still in retrograde. At this point, though, Mercury is in Aquarius. So Venus in Aries sextiling Mercury in Aquarius. And a sextile is a compatibility. It's about opportunity. And this might kind of lighten the energy a little bit around maybe some of these relationship issues we've been going through, some of these realizations about our Venusian desires and how we want to create more awareness about how we assert ourselves in relationship to our desires. Excuse me, Mercury in Aquarius, Mercury is about understanding and thinking and communicating. So it may be an opportunity to be able to have conversation about this more with a more detached and sort of ability to stand back and be a little less emotional about things. But also really just a way to kind of integrate some of this awareness into our consciousness and really just kind of move forward on a mental level with a more expanded and a more progressive understanding and ability to communicate some of these new understandings or new awareness around our relationship issues. On the 8th of March, Venus will be connecting with Uranus. And this is now Venus having moved into the sign of Taurus, which is on March 4th. This is the sign that Venus rules. So it's going to just really shift the Venusian energy into a very kind of calmer, sort of more relaxed, more pleasure-seeking energy, but really Venus now being in its home energy of Taurus, it can kind of just take a breather and get more grounded and experience more of the pleasures in our lives. Now, with it then conjuncting Uranus, again, that's going to happen there on the 8th of March. You can see here the two are together. This should be interesting because Uranus is all about change. And Uranus is about being unique and being an individual. But Venus is about wanting to find pleasure and wanting to connect through relationship. So this is actually really kind of a beautiful energy that's going to give us that opportunity to experience the desire principle of Venus in this unique new way with Uranus and Taurus that is going to help us express our desires in ways that are in alignment with new values in our life and with progressive values and with new ways of connecting to relationship with people. Again, going back to this idea of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in relationship to Venus conjuncting Uranus, bringing with it this, in some ways, like a transformed Venus energy, so that it can now meet with Uranus, which is this innovative energy of change and being different and being an individual, and perhaps have a little bit less of a kind of possessive nature. That can be Taurus at times, and really express more of the beautiful energies of Taurus, which are self-reliant stability, thoroughness, patience, perseverance, protectiveness, sensuality, aesthetic sensibility. So it can help, this connection can really help Venus sort of step into a new Taurian expression of itself that has more of a liberated feeling about it. And it doesn't necessarily mean like things are going to get or have to get like super weird and kinky and, you know, whatever in relationships, open relationships. These are ideas of Uranus and Taurus, but for me, I've always felt like Taurus is still Taurus. Taurus is still about wanting commitment, wanting security, wanting stability. So I really feel that this is really about how to express that Venus and Taurus energy that wants all of those things, but in somehow a new and liberated way that creates just a little more room, a little more breadth around the Venusian energy rather than such a tight grip in relationship to relationships. On a very mundane, practical level, this could be very interesting, innovative ideas around creative expression that we could be bringing out in our lives through our creative process. It could be new ways of understanding how we want to work with our finances and work with money. You know, this whole Uranus and Taurus is bringing new ways around relating to money, and also really new ways around what we find valuable. It's kind of paring down what we find valuable. It's grounding what we find valuable. And so it's going to be coming up with new ways to make money, new ways to understand what we find valuable in our lives. You know, is it, you know, all the stuff we have, or is it just really more about valuing specific things that really have a lot of meaning to us? It's that kind of thinking where it might be going from this in relationship to money and relationships down to like this, the things that are really valuable to us. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. I hope you all have a enlightening Venus squared Pluto time. Please feel free to comment with any comments below. And if you like my channel, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.